Welcome, everybody. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Monroe County Public Library Board of Trustees. We have our quorum. We'll jump right into our agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve our consent agenda consisting of minutes, monthly financial report, monthly bills for payment, personnel reports, and our meeting calendar. Is there any discussion or comments? Seeing none, can we call the roll vote, please?
Okay, Jamie,
Aye.
Kari,
Aye.
David,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Kathy,
Aye.
Fred,
Aye.
and John.
Aye. And I'll turn it over now to Marilyn for both the director's monthly report and our 2020 annual report.
Thanks, John. So I will report a little bit about the January director's report and certainly answer any questions that you have. I think one of the things that's exciting for us anyway is that the use of electronic resources hit an all-time high in January. Perhaps not surprising at this point in the pandemic when we continue to point to electronic resources, but it was really use that was increased across a variety of platforms. So this is really a lot of different resources that we saw increased use, and it continues to rise. The other big note is that take and make kits are incredibly popular, and they're not just incredibly popular with teens, but with all ages. So we have them for kids, we have them for teens, we have them for adults, and some of the adult ones, it was part of one of our newsletters that went out, and within minutes, they were all gone. So they were a quick take, and people are really appreciating those tangible things that they can get their hands on right now. And one of the other really important things that we did in January was to launch a community reading challenge, and it's called Everyone Has a Story. And you can find that information on our website and link to a variety of resources that are available. But it's really designed to highlight all of our needs for stories about diversity among people and among our own stories. So it helps participants discover books and short videos that they can view, and they can sign up on our website through Beanstack. And that's where they would also find book lists and or educational resources and other things to use. So any questions about the director's report, and then I'll go on into our annual report. Okay, on I go. So the 2020 annual report, it has been submitted and accepted by the Indiana State Library. And this is something that we do each year. And it's primarily a look at statistics. And some of those statistics are measured against public library standards that are required for us to meet to remain a Class A library in the state of Indiana. A lot of those were waived for 2020 for obvious reasons. We were unable to meet the standards that we might need to meet for hours open and or programs and other things. So I don't want to focus so much on the fact that our numbers went down, because they did. They went down across the board. But there were a few things that remained static. And I think in terms of things like acquisitions. So our acquisition rate, we continue to do the work behind the scenes. And in fact, our collections resources was about 17% of our operating budget in 2020. We have typically tried to make it about 15. So we certainly reached that in 2020. Our utility costs were down. Again, you might expect that because there were fewer people in our buildings. And some of the important shifts, though, that we made in 2020 were really not so much shown in these statistics, but really in the way that we pivoted and provided services. And for instance, we provided 262 live virtual programs for all ages, which was something that we had not done in the past. And we had more than 8,000 people that attended both those virtual programs and the live programs that we had in January through March before we closed. And we recorded those virtual programs, and they've in total had over 15,000 views so far. So they're popular in our community. And I sent to you a few minutes ago, so you may or may not have even seen it yet, but a list of 2020 achievements. And I think that, along with the Indiana annual report, is really important to see. There's an entire section in that achievement document that is about ways in which we responded to COVID-19. And so the way that we were able to do that was really adapting our services, offering curbside, pickup by appointment, printing services, technology use. The other very important thing, of course, is that we were successfully implementing really extensive COVID-19 safeguards. So we, for the public, we have high-risk hours for at-risk populations. We quarantine our materials upon return and processing. We've redesigned our outreach services so that there's no contact procedures. But then also on the service side of it, we have updated our website. We've included more personalization recommendations for patrons so that they can actually get to the materials when they can't browse the shelves. We also issued over 1,000 library cards remotely, so people could call us or chat with us online, and we would issue a card so that they could use electronic resources while we were closed. We also increased the number of digital items that we had, and we decreased limits on a number of those so that people had additional access that they wouldn't otherwise have had. And one of the things that we've talked about in the past is that we hosted the community mask station. So we have been one of their largest distributor of masks in the community, with about 6,000 masks going out so far, or more than that now. So those are ways in which that we pivoted to ensure that we were continuing to provide services in a really strange 2020 and still doing it now and continuing to evolve. Any questions on that?
Well, it's a great document and a great list of accomplishments. Who else is the audience for this document, you know, the accomplishments?
It will go out to all of our staff tomorrow. We finished it at about 5:15 today, and then we will post it on our website as well. This is something that we have provided. In fact, the 2019 list of accomplishments was part of our strategic plan that went to the state library. So we do try to share this with the community so that they can see just where we stand in terms of our resources and services.
And does the state library get this, or were they asking for other information relevant to the pandemic, or just waiving things that were not relevant?
They ask a few questions, particularly virtual programming, but they were really still more concerned with the numbers than, and primarily that came from the Public Library Association, which was still looking for numbers in a way that they have in the past. But I do think that they are very aware of the ways that people pivoted. For instance, just offering Wi-Fi in the parking lot was a brand new thing for a lot of libraries this year, but it reached the public in a way that they really needed it, particularly when kids didn't have access to the internet at home and they were trying to do their schoolwork. So there were things like that that libraries stepped up to. And I think those are things that we're trying to share with the state library so that they're aware of some of the ways that we provided services. And another one is just to provide more information to our legislature, because they too, I mean, they provided funding, and we want to ensure that they know that we weren't just sitting back during this. We were absolutely critical for continuing to provide services.
I think this would be good to share also with our local, you know, the county council, county commissioners who, you know, facilitate a lot of our work. And so.
Yes, I agree. Yeah. We did send a pretty major mailing of our strategic plan to all of those folks, everybody who was a stakeholder a couple of weeks ago. It went out by the 15th of the month. So we've been trying to share all of those documents with as many people as we can.
Any other questions for Marilyn?
No, I just would like to say thank you. We've mentioned this before, the creative programming, all the new things that came up, keeping services running. I appreciate you partnering with Mass. Every time that I've been in, I've picked up a couple of child size so I could redistribute them to children in school.
Excellent.
I just want to say thank you for everything, all the librarians.
And I guess I'd like to echo too, especially the make and take bags. I think, people need something to do besides just read. And so that has provided another source of direction following and an activity for children and as obviously adults too. So thank you very much for thinking, whoever thought of those things too. That was wonderful.
Well, there are a few faces I think that are in here, and it's not me who were responsible for those. So I say thank you as well.
I have a question. Did the masked bandits attack the public library station?
We read that in the paper and otherwise, and we are not aware that it happened on that day. Actually, now there were times earlier that we would be cleaned out, from day to day, but I don't think it happened in that organized fashion to us.
Okay.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Marilyn. Thank you, all the library staff. And moving on to old business, update on the Southwest branch activity.
It's a quick update. It's just to let everybody know that we are very close to closing on the property, which I think, John, is it scheduled for next week?
Yes.
Okay, so we will soon close on the property and we're continuing on design development and everything looks a go.
Thank you. Any questions on the branch update?
I'm
Short and sweet. Oh, go ahead.
I don't have a question, but maybe a statement. I'm assuming that the tree issue has been resolved to some satisfaction for the groups.
That's correct. When we chose the site plan that we did, it effectively took care of the issues that were expressed, as well as the forestry report was really very, very revealing in terms of some of the invasive plants that were there. And so it really was an opportunity for us to reach out and talk with the folks that were concerned about the trees to say, okay, so here's some things that we need to do to make them last for more years. I mean, not just to leave them alone, but actually take care of some of the invasive species that are there. So we're in good shape.
Moving on then to new business and our action items. As we do every February, we need to elect officers for 2021. Do we have a motion nominating a slate of officers for 2021?
I do. I would like to nominate following officers. For president, we're going to talk you into doing this again, John. John Walsh. Vice President, Chris Harrison. Secretary, Corey Isaacson Asari. And Treasurer Dave Ferguson. That's my.
We have a. Thank you, Fred. We have a motion nominating a slate of officers. Do we have a second for that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Jamie. Any discussion? Then can we call the roll, please?
Thank you, John, for doing this again.
Thank you, everybody who's serving as officers and as trustees.
Thank you, Corey, for being secretary. It's been a few years for me.
All right, we'll start with Jamie. Kari,
Aye.
David,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Kathy,
Aye.
Fred,
Aye.
and John.
Aye. Thank you again, everyone. We now have started into a slew of resolutions related to bonds and that. Are you gonna, well, first, do we have a motion to adopt a reimbursement resolution?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Marilyn, are you or Gary going to kind of introduce these and textualize them for us?
I'm planning, I was going to go over them as we go through them. I will do a screen share, just a second.
And we have
Thank you,
one of
Gary.
our bond reps on the line. Should we need them, we can give them a call. So
Okay, before I get to the reimbursement resolution, I just wanted to go over a couple of financial updates. Last month in the Board of Finance meeting, we talked about the pandemic and its effect on the library budget. We estimated that the worst case scenario would be a drop in the 2020 Indiana personal income for the state of 3%. So we estimated potentially a drop of 3% based on what happened back in 2008, 2009. This week, I looked at the data on the Bureau of Economic Analysis website, which now has the personal income data for the first 3 quarters of 2020 compared to the previous year. So when we look at this first slide here, 2019 quarter 1, 323,606. So that's in thousands of dollars. So it's actually, I think, $323 million for the first quarter of 2019. First quarter of 2020, 332 million. So it went up. Second quarter, it went up again. Third quarter, another increase. Fourth quarter is an estimate for 2020 based on the fourth quarter of the previous year. So that, I think, is maybe worst case scenario, that it wouldn't go up. So where's that put us? It's an increase of 4.57%. That means our estimated growth quotient for 2022 is again over 4%. So that's quite a surprise, given what we were thinking last month. But so then we look at our history of growth quotients and our history of operating fund surplus. If we look at 2020, the actual operating surplus was a little over $1.4 million. For 2021, we're projecting $1.2 million surplus. 2022, given this information, is now an estimate of a $1 million surplus. 2023, 2024, again, estimates of $700,000 for those years. So that's where we stand. Much better than we thought that we would be at this point, but that's how it is. Next, this is an updated
Gary, I'm sorry, Kari had a question for
Oh,
you.
yes,
I'm
yes.
sorry. Can you go back? Okay, so I might be just nuts, but it looks like from in 2020, Q2 to Q3, it went down, and Q3 to Q4, it went down.
Well, okay, so 2020, Q2, 357,500,000.
Right, but then
And
we went
above
down.
that is 2019, 325,
Right,
340. So it went from 325 up to 350.
I see. You're comparing 19 to 20, not quarter to quarter to quarter.
Yeah, yes, yes.
Okay, that answers my question. So, okay,
Okay,
sorry.
no problem. So this report is it's a report. You looked at a draft of it in January. Baker Tilly prepared it. It is basically, I guess, the most valuable part of this report is this schedule right here, which shows what our bond payments are going to be. There were just some slight changes so that this report would tie out to the numbers in the resolution. But we're looking at about a $900,000 total bond payment per year once we have both bonds. And this is a look over the life of the bonds at the tax rate for the debt levy. And we can see that the highest it gets for the debt levy is slightly over 1 cent in 2023. And then it begins to drop. The rate drops. And by the time we get to 2028, it's 0.8 of a cent. So again, our debt levy is the guideline is a penny, and the operating fund tax rate guideline is 9 cents. So for a total library tax of about 10 cents.
And I'll add just one thing also, that estimated rate is based on the highest level of interest that we might pay. So it's not expected to be at that.
And now finally to the reimbursement resolution. So this will allow the library to reimburse for cost related to issuing the bonds if the payments for those costs have to be made before the bonds are actually sold. So we have done this for our previous 3 bonds. And are there any questions on this?
Sorry.
So has the motion been made, or are we ready for the vote?
We did have a motion and a second. And thank you for that overview, Gary. Is there any further discussion? Then I'll ask for the roll call to approve the adoption of the reimbursement resolution.
Jamie,
Aye.
Kari,
Aye.
David,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Kathy,
Aye.
Fred,
Aye.
and John.
Aye. Thank you. And next up, we have 4 more bond resolutions. 2021A bond resolution, 2021A appropriation resolution, 2021B bond resolution, 2021B appropriation resolution. So do we have a motion first for adoption of the 2021A bond resolution?
So moved.
Second,
We have a motion and a second. Before discussion, Gary, do you have anything to add about this?
This is the $2 million bond. This bond resolution can be approved now because the bond is not related to a controlled project. And so it requires fewer steps for approval than the Series B bond, which is related to a controlled project. So this document here is 15 pages long. And it has a lot of legal details related to the bond sale. And our bond attorneys at Bose McKinney have prepared this document for us. Any questions?
Any discussion or questions about this bond resolution? Then please call the roll for adoption of this 2021A bond resolution.
Okay, Jamie?
Aye.
Kari?
Aye.
David?
aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Kathy?
Aye.
Fred?
Aye.
And John?
Aye. Now on our agenda, the next three are just introductions. Are they not, they are not action items tonight?
That's correct.
Okay. So we don't need motions for these, so I'll turn it over to you,
Okay.
Gary.
Okay. So the Series A Appropriation Resolution, this resolution spells out what the $2 million bond will be used for. And it's basically to keep library technology equipment and facilities in good operating shape. Before this resolution can be approved, a public notice has to be put in the local newspapers, and there has to be a public hearing. And so the public hearing and adoption of this resolution is currently scheduled for the April board meeting. Any question on the Series A appropriation resolution before I move on to the next one? Seeing none, this is the Series B bond resolution. This is the $6 million bond. And since this is for a controlled project, we need to take some additional steps to authorize this bond. We'll need to hold 2 public hearings to be held at the next 2 library board meetings on this. And then once the resolution is adopted, we will publish a notice of its adoption. Once that is published, there will be an opportunity for property owners and registered voters to request the application of a petition remonstrance process. The petition for application of the petition remonstrance process would need to be signed by at least 500 property owners and registered voters in the library district. If such a petition is properly filed, it would slow down this transaction and add some additional steps and time to the authorization process, approximately 3 to 4 months. It isn't common to receive a petition for the application of this process unless a project is controversial or unless there is organized opposition. Our bond attorneys will publish the notice of the 2 hearings on this resolution to be held at the next 2 library board meetings following this board meeting. So after this board meeting, they'll get those notifications published. Any question on the Series B bond resolution before we move to the next document?
I don't see any questions, Gary.
Okay. So the next document is the Series B appropriation resolution. And this is the resolution that will appropriate the proceeds of the Series B bond into the library's budget. After this meeting, a notice of public hearing on the appropriation will be sent to the local newspapers. The current timetable has the board holding the public hearing on this resolution at the April board meeting and then adopting the resolution at the same meeting. So that takes care of the bond related documents that we needed to handle at this board meeting. And any questions before we wrap this up?
This one we're looking at now, Gary, the appropriation resolution 2021B. If the bond resolution were held up as you described, would this also be delayed then the same amount of time roughly?
I think that's probable, yes. So if we were delayed a month, I think it could delay this a month.
Okay. Any other questions for Gary?
Is there a continuing disclosure document we should also look at, Gary?
That is should be in the documents that we send to the board. If we haven't sent that already, we should send it. It's not one that we have to approve tonight.
It was part of the packet, so it's the next document within it.
Okay.
What page is that we're on to now?
Let me take a quick look here.
Mute is off.
It looks like it's about 201. Let me see. No, a little bit before that. Right around page 200. Page 196 to be exact.
So I believe the bond resolution refers to this part of the bond documents, and the continuing disclosure is, I guess, basically saying that we will notify Baker Tilly, who will notify bondholders and everyone else if there are events that would cause there to be any risk of bond payments not being made or anything that would substantially change the financial position of the library. So those are things that we're agreeing that we will disclose, and that's what this document is about.
Are all those are those separate motions when we get to that stage, or are they approved as part of the overall bond resolution or appropriations resolution?
I'm not sure there will be a separate step for, Tom is giving the confirmation. I don't think there's going to be a separate step to approve the continuing disclosure part of it.
When you adopt the various resolutions, the continuing disclosure document is incorporated in that. That is a document, and Gary did a good job describing the intent behind it. It's a requirement on us as the recipient of the funds to let people know if there are any issues that will jeopardize the payment. And you won't approve that. It's just a part of, as I know many of you have been down there, it's just a part of the paper trail that has to be in the bond documents and is signed. It's just a commitment by the trustees to say we will inform the bondholders of any issues that would impact payment. But you won't approve that particular document. You'll do the resolutions which incorporate that as a part of the process.
And then we'll sign a bunch of things.
And then you will sign a bunch of things. And you're doing 2 of these, so you're going to sign bunches of things.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tom.
Okay,
No
I
problem.
have one question. If we should get delayed with any of these bonds or something, would that affect the timeline of building the new branch?
It could potentially, but we have some wiggle room. So if we were delayed a month on something, it would not kill us.
Those excess funds the previous years will serve us well here.
Any other questions? Well, thank you, Gary. So we'll be tackling these other bond and appropriations resolutions at future hearings and board meetings. And thank you for preparing us for those. We now move on to our monthly update. We have a great team here to talk to us about staff development and an update on the Pioneer Grant. Bara Swinson, Tim Baker, Edwin Falwell, and Jen Hoffman.
You're muted, Bara.
No, I'm not. Okay, I'm still Bara Swinson, the strategist for staff development and projects. And I'm happy to have my cohorts in good crime here to present with us about their Pioneer Grant experiences, which has been a fun report the last few years. Many of you have seen some of these first slides I'm going to show with you again. So let's just get started. Maybe. There we go. The central goals are one of the things that I know you've seen before, but I've updated it a little bit. You may remember that one of the duties that I'm keyed into is making sure that the professional librarians have certification to meet standards for the state. And I also want to make sure that staff continue to live the humbling and joyous experience of learning, because we need to be modeling lifelong learning for our patrons, as well as anticipating and inspecting them to do it. And here's what I've updated. Create a culture of learning. And this used to say change. Now it says agility at the speed of change, which is heading I've been seeing on some of the training lists that I'm on, and people are saying, you know, change is happening fast, but in COVID world, it's happening super fast. So that is something that we've been working with, and I have some more to say about that later. Okay, so when I was planning for 2020, I was like, I don't know how to talk about this year. It's so weird. And I know all of you have had a COVID 2020 experience of some kind. I decided to put it together kind of chronologically, grouping it in before time, and then the chaos that hit, and then as we're striving to build what we're going to become, seeing how those things are happening from the vantage point of training and learning for staff. So the first 2 months, 2.5 months, we had the last of the before times. So that meant I was doing relatively normal type things, making sure that we had staff requests for content fulfilled. And that included two big topics that we got done in that first 2 months, one of which was the conflict management and communication requests. Then we got started what we anticipated to be a several part manager training, then to open up and have it for the rest of the staff. But we got one training in before things happened. And the other was to concentrate on homelessness. That was a request from staff surveys as well. We were supporting new initiatives like we did a training for moving Mac computers onto the public computing floor. And we especially invested training for staff who are going to lead and facilitate continuous improvement discussions at staff day. And I think, Fred, you got to participate in one of those. I don't know, can't remember if there are others that came that day or not. And we had some housekeeping that about credit card receipts and travel expenditures. So that was our variety. That's kind of what normal was, and somewhat hopefully getting back to those kinds of things coming up. And the highlight of many years, and this year was, or last year was also well received, was Staff Day 2020, which happened in February 18th. I mentioned that specifically because we're anticipating March coming. And during that time, we had the fruition of those folks that got trained for facilitating conversations, because we had 13 staff groups that discussed that with that leadership. And we also, even though we had reduced sessions, we had 195 learning hours completed by 106 unique staff attending. And then, well, I'll add a little personal note. I actually missed Staff Day this year because, I won't say I'm a trendsetter, but I had 6 weeks of pneumonia at the beginning of the year before testing for COVID was available. So I missed Staff Day, and it was about mid-March when I was wrapping up, feeling like I was ready to come back to work, and that didn't happen because on the 13th of March, we all closed down. And that made staff development and training turn into a change or agility at the speed of change, which meant that in several different cases, we needed to learn how to do it while simultaneously doing it and teaching how to do it on the same day. So that was pretty hectic for many different people and tested our comfort level on different things. I'm going to give you one fleshed out example. I had more involvement in the way that we started doing remote phone application answering. And we also paired that with remote chat reference. So initially, you might remember that only the leadership team was working for a short period of time. And that meant that several of the things that we were doing were new skills for different people. Some of us had not issued library cards. Some of us, and I would say me in that instance, are not real comfortable answering reference questions because that's not my background. And we had some hurdles with installing that technology and a learning curve of how to navigate that. Essentially, the app makes smartphones appear and function as though they're an extension of the library phone system. At some point, we turned on voicemail to receive, since we aren't open at all, receive patron questions and comments, and the leadership team was responding to those, maybe 10 or 15 tops on a given day. We quickly moved to adding all of the COCU staff to have to figure out how to learn the app, which I trained remotely on for all of the different smartphones for the 20, 30 some people that was. And then we got a scheduling app for curbside service. So we all learned that, and that was more a remote training. The week that I took charge of delegating the voicemails, we turned on Papira and we had holds placement available. And in the first hour, I had 50 voicemails that, even though we had other staff answering questions, I had 50 voicemails. And before the day was out, I had 150. And even as we added more people to that mix to answer the live calls, we were, it wasn't unusual to have 100 voicemails also to distribute. So did I mention trial by fire, learn it, do it, teach it the same day? There were several other projects that followed that same scheme. I'm not going to outline all of those. Many of these will be familiar to you in your workplaces as well. We needed to quickly learn how to use Zoom, collaborating with Google Docs, curbside appointment software, Beanstack, which meant our whole summer reading programming. We had to learn how to figure that out and get it set up very quickly. Lisa did a really good job with that. Virtual programming, we learned how to do that. Marilyn touched on that already. And we also needed to learn with that some green screen recording. Those are all kind of technical things. But we also needed to learn as we came back to work, required COVID safety precautions, how to wash your hands, how to put gloves on, wearing a mask, et cetera, et cetera. We learned how to quarantine materials. And we are still working on how to assist patrons with unemployment applications and registrations for vaccine appointments. So those were a lot of, and I know there are more, but that's just a flavor of the type of gearing up very quickly to learn it and do it on the same day. We also, it overlaps, built the new, or are building the new normal. So one of the positive things that came out of that section was when we were working from home or having limited, we had that team rotation of 1 week on and 2 weeks off, as we rotated through the 3 teams, that meant that people had more time that they could allocate towards learning because they weren't providing the services that we did normally before that. So between March and December, we had 531 different registrations for webinars in our traditional way, but no live performances, right? Because no in-person things were happening. We had what was on my work plan to introduce a new service called Niche Academy, which has a public facing side. So you may have seen some of those, but it's, for me, my push to get it was to be able to make staff training available easily to staff. And within that service, we had 26 different tutorials that had 100 or more views. So at least people were clicking on them and looking at them, and 635 staff completed sessions, which is a brand new direction for, that 531 registrations in the old way we used to do it. We're still doing it that way. But we also added more completed sessions with Niche Academy. And you can see exactly when we started making Niche Academy available to our staff who are working from home, starting in April and taken off in May. So it's really clear how much we were utilizing it. And to a lesser extent, you can see the growth again when we went from limited services in October and November, when we had more staff in building responsibilities, to picking up and having more staff training there again. But the biggest thing that came out of Niche, just the week or so that I made it available, we purchased a whole new suite of topics, which is for an additional fee, by a fellow named Ryan Dowd, who is a fellow who works and runs a homeless center, as well as he understands that there's a link between librarianship and homeless centers, because we share in some part a common audience. And library staff just love his presentations. He focuses on librarian guides to homelessness. I had a senior information assistant when that week came out. He was so excited about it. He emailed everybody on staff and said, "This is the best thing since sliced bread, pretty much. I recommend everyone watch this stuff. He's so good." Excuse me. And last week I had a librarian organically come to me and say, "Were you the one, Barb, that was responsible for buying Ryan Dowd? I just love his stuff. I'm watching all of his things." We probably got the mileage at a time when we were feeling very stressed out about opening, even for limited things, to the public in the building. And Ryan Dowd had a really nice presentation about how to manage behaviors during the COVID time, about mask wearing and we're doing other things about way we were asking people to have shorter visits and different things that are limited access. So I was quite surprised that I expected that 2020 would be dismal in comparison to our previous years, and that's not what I found. We were certainly comparable with our attendance, but we had a much larger number for the number of unique different classes available. And that's in large part because staff were researching on their own to find the things of their particular interest, as well as lots of different things that were required to return to the workplace. And I just put on there for fun those 635 things that were being offered by niche, which if you stack those together really makes a tall pile in comparison to all the other years that I've been tracking this information. Of course, I also want to end on looking forward. I anticipate from the comments that I'm getting now and from the survey results for 2021 requests that mental health for our community and for our staff are going to be a popular content topic. We've had people recently sign up for, I think it's next week, they're going to be attending the mental health first aid for youth. We've already made trauma-informed services available to our staff. And last week or the week before, we had trauma-informed management information available for our leadership team. We've got a subgroup working on mental health and wellness information and local services to make available to our staff and for our patrons. I anticipate that we'll be focusing more with the economy, wellness, the financial wellness, retooling folks for jobs and job searching. And I just, for fun, on the ending here of summary of my thing, there were 6 views on Niche Academy for a new lesson called Burnout and Stress, just in case 2021 is as bad as 2020. So we're already looking for that, and some of our staff are reading it. So that's where I think we're going to be ending up going. And I'm going to wrap up here before I introduce my pioneers. Does anybody have any questions?
That all looks great, Bara. Thanks so much for keeping, the staff well prepared for, whatever's facing us, and especially with everything we faced over the past year. I'm also grateful, as I'm sure everyone else is, for the efforts to serve the homeless in our community and assist with all the issues that they're facing. So thank you to you and the rest of your team.
Okay, it looks like the questions are complete, and now my favorite part is going to happen. I've had these presentations with my reviews a few years now. We have the Pioneer Grant, and if you haven't heard about that before, every year we have a nomination, a grant application process, just internally to our staff who are present ideas and compete with each other for the money that we have set aside for this project, sponsored by the Friends of the Library. And one of the big requirements is that whatever's being suggested, whether it be a long-term project like a new collection or a particular single go as a program, that it has to benefit our users, our public and patrons. So without much further ado, I'm really excited to introduce our 2 successful Pioneer Grant folks. We've got 2 pairs. Bethany, I'm sorry that you didn't get listed in the agenda to be working with Kim Baker and, as I mentioned, Bethany Turrentine. They're going to go first and talk about the Dyslexia Awareness project they've been working on, and how the grant was specifically part of the educational process for that, so really linked in the staff development way. And the second group is Edwin Falwell and Jen Hoffman, and they're going to talk about a new collection that they worked on called Adventure Backpacks. So Bethany and Kim, are you ready to go? You're both muted.
Hi, yeah, sorry about that. Getting the screen share set up here. Yay. Okay. All right. So on my screen, I see the like Zoom. I see everybody's like little gallery still. Do you all see that, or do you just see? You do still see
I
it.
see the gallery
We
and
see the slide and you. Yeah.
your
Okay.
slide is beautiful.
Okay, great. Thank you. So, okay. So as far as said, my name is Kim Baker and I'm a community engagement librarian. I'm going to talk today about a Pioneer Grant project called MCPL, a Dyslexia-Friendly Library, which I worked on with our vital coordinator, Bethany Turrentine. And the main gist of this project really was to kickstart different services to make our library dyslexia friendly, and that can mean a lot of different things. But to get this started, the first thing we have to do is train our staff, right? We wanted our staff to be aware of dyslexia. So we're increasing their awareness so that they could better serve the public, particularly those public who have dyslexia. And it would give our staff, right, the knowledge they would need to adapt the different elements of their services and programming to make it to make that dyslexia friendly. And then of course, right, all of that work is going to help our neurodiverse learners feel more welcome in our library. So really what I'm talking about here is like building a foundation to a lot of other good work that we can do. So why dyslexia? There's a couple different reasons. And the first one is that dyslexia is really prevalent, right? Nationally, it's estimated that 10 to 20% of our population has dyslexia. And here in Indiana, it's estimated that 20% of our children have dyslexia. And dyslexia isn't something that goes away. I don't have the statistics for the adults, right? But if 20% of our children have dyslexia, they're going to grow up and become adults with dyslexia. So we can kind of guess that about 20% of our adult population also has dyslexia. So we're talking about a big piece of the public there. The other reason why we'd want to focus on dyslexia at the library, right, is that dyslexia is this neurological condition that affects the way an individual processes language, right? I've got this huge definition here on dyslexia from the International Dyslexia Association. I'm not going to read that, but I'm just going to kind of quick summarize that it's something that affects, right, accurate and fluent word recognition, affects a person's decoding ability. It's this kind of deficit of their phonological component of language, right? So these different elements about how we process language, which could lead to, right, difficulty with reading comprehension, which is, right, linked to reduced reading experience, lower vocabulary, and then less background knowledge. So all these like really great elements that key really nicely into our library, which is concerned with literacy. It also connects to our library's goals of providing a welcoming place, right? We're providing more dyslexia services, helping those people feel welcome in our library, so we're welcoming them. And it also connects to our goal of providing equitable access. But why now? So dyslexia is, of course, something that's always been with us, but it's really important to look at it now because recently our lawmakers have passed what's called the Senate Enrollment Act 217, which was this law that required all the public schools in Indiana to pre-screen children in kindergarten to second grade for dyslexia. That went into effect the 2019-2020 school year. So we were kind of predicting that because of this screening, we're going to have a lot more of the public kind of recognizing or becoming aware of dyslexia for their children, and then also perhaps of their family, right? And then this outcome section, I've kind of touched on this a little bit already, so I'm going to go really quickly on this, right? Our primary audience for the training, learn about different resources available to help people with dyslexia, and then of course modify their existing programming and services to gear it toward dyslexia-friendly services. And then for our patrons, right, we wanted them to feel welcome and included and supported by the staff throughout through the various services that we provide. So what did we do, right? 2020 was, had different plans, right? But we had planned to invite some speakers from the Dyslexia Institute of Indiana to the library to train our COCU staff. In April, of course, we had to pivot away from that. And for a while, we were a little bit uncertain of what to do because there was no trainings going on. But I had found on Dyslexia Institute of Indiana's website that they had started teaching their 40-hour basic Orton-Gilliam class online. And I was able to do that training over the summer of 2020. I was thinking about this when Bara was talking about how 2020 gave people a lot of this extra time, right, where they could train. And I kind of think about this training as like one of those kind of gifts of the pandemic, right? If we didn't have this pandemic, there's no way I would have been able to have the time needed to do this training. And it's called a basic training, but it's rather intensive. There's a lot of work there. And this is something that it's a training that Bethany completed a few years prior. So when I was finished the class, we were both able to take our kind of combined knowledge and create a training that we could share with the rest of our staff. So we created this training to raise our staff's dyslexia awareness in Google Classroom. It was approved for 2 LEU credits so that our staff could get their continuing education credits by completing this. We launched it in October to coincide with Dyslexia Awareness Month. And we call this Dyslexia-Friendly Library Challenge in October and in November to encourage our staff to go ahead and take this training, even though it's always available. And it's kind of one of the great benefits of this setup, actually, is because we created ourselves in Google Classroom. It's something that Bethany and I can kind of return to, make sure it keeps up to date, and something that we can continually have our staff trained in, right? So anybody who hasn't yet taken this training can do it, and any new staff we bring on can also do this training. And then also, if you are interested, we could share the training with you, and you could do it as well. So that's what we did. And how did we do? So to date, we've had 30 staff from all levels and all areas of our library who started and completed this training. So it's all levels from material handlers up to our director. I know Marilyn zipped into that. So thank you, Marilyn. And the staff that worked on this training, they took a survey at the beginning of the training and then again at the end to talk about, or to kind of get an assessment of how much they knew already about dyslexia and then how much they learned at the end. And we got some really great gains in this, I think. We found that staff's understanding of dyslexia increased by 23% by the end of the training. Their understanding of how dyslexia can impact an individual increased by 23%. Their ability to help people with dyslexia feel welcome and supported in the library increased by 33%. And on these next couple of slides, you're going to see these little comment bubbles. These are quotes from staff who completed this training. They left on the different surveys that we had, the different follow-up surveys that we'd had. And I'm not going to read those as I go through, but I wanted to point out this top one, which this person had commented that the training made them feel more confident about the topic and knowledgeable enough to be part of the conversations in our library. And I think that to me, that comment to me is like, okay, that's success, right? I've got this staff person who now feels confident in this. They can talk about it. They can do some good work to that and kind of participate. So I felt really great about that comment in particular. Oh, all right. So I mentioned this was just a kickoff, right? We wanted to do this training to kick off how we can make our library dyslexia friendly. And we've already made a little bit of headway there. We've created new information and resource pages on dyslexia on our website, created a Celebrate Dyslexia book list for youth. Communication and marketing's helped me create new signage and children's to follow the International Federation of Library Association's guidelines on providing dyslexia services in libraries. Created a dyslexia awareness video program to spread dyslexia awareness in our community. It has 244 views to date. And we started to seek out further training in dyslexia for the staff, which is one of the things that our staff who completed the survey indicated that they wanted as a follow-up. They just want more training on this so they can learn even more about this topic. Now, the big kickoff was in October and November. And in early January, I followed up with the staff who had completed it during that time to ask what kind of, how that training has affected them, how's it affected their work right now. And with the kind of caveat, right, that I know that the way we work right now is very different than the way we worked a few years ago. But here's how they responded. 80% of the staff who interface with patrons felt that the way they interface is different than it was before the training. And specifically, they had mentioned that they're thinking more about the way they communicate orally and in writing. When they do readers advisory, they're offering now a variety of types of material instead of just just one type of material. And someone else wrote in that they're softening their approach, right? They're not making assumptions about an individual's reading capabilities, which I think is really important kind of takeaway from this as well. Only a couple of programmers who are programming during the pandemic responded to that survey, but they had indicated that they were making some changes to the way they're programming, mostly in the way they're providing visuals in their instructions, or paying attention to the font choices when they're having to write something up. So really paying attention to kind of those graphical or those visual elements in their work. And then some different plans I have about what we're working on next. Bethany Turretine, Chris Jackson, the special outreach strategist, and myself created this Dyslexia-Friendly Library Strategic Plan for 2021, where we're going to continue to build on our dyslexia services based on staff and community feedback. We're looking at different tools we could purchase to help individuals with learning differences, and we're also looking into different technology that we could acquire to help those individuals. Another element that I'm working on this year is education kits. These would be kits that mostly focus on literacy and things, but I might include some with maths, and they'll be used in Vital and then also in children's. And at the beginning, they'll be circulating only, and then when we're able to open back up to the public and let them use in-house items, we'll have some in-house kits as well. We're also looking at ways to make our materials more accessible to people with learning differences. And I'm going to keep looking at different training that we could provide for the staff. And that's it. This is my kind of last page with some of the links to the different things I referenced throughout this presentation. And I'm going to stop there and ask if anyone has any questions.
A wonderful thing to do as a speech therapist.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
I know there are subsets of dyslexia, for example, like orthographic processing, phonological, like there are different subsets. When you're looking at gathering materials, are you looking at getting a variety of those so that people who have challenges in the different areas of dyslexia, there's enough resources available for them?
Yeah, it is something that we're paying attention to, right? Because there's like no two dyslexics are exactly the same, right? Dyslexia just affects individuals in very different ways, and also to just different severity. So yeah, we are looking at a variety of tools that we could provide that would help the different types of dyslexia that are out there. And of course, I say that knowing, right, there's no way possibly we're going to actually know of all the exact tools. So I hope that as we keep going and building, people share what they know with us, and we can continue to kind of grow and build from that. So, yeah.
I appreciate your work in this area as someone who's been involved in literacy for a long time. So thank you for digging into it and thinking about it. And thanks.
Is that a dyslexia-friendly font that you're using in your presentation?
It is the headings is specifically, that's a open dyslexia font, which is why I've got this in PowerPoint. I couldn't get that to go into Google Slides for some reason. But yeah, that's the open dyslexia font. And the other font here, it is dyslexia friendly. It's not specifically made for dyslexia. They're dyslexic individuals. But yeah, the way it has no sans serif, and there's good spacing between the letters, and the letters are nice and round, and very clear differentiations between those capital letters and the lowercase letters. Yeah, I don't totally love the way this I has no caps, but the rest of it I think is fairly good.
Any other questions? Well, thank you, Kim and Bethany. This is a great project, and thank you for sharing it with us.
Thank you so much.
Okay, well, I'm going to help the transition here. One thing I'll say in closing for Kim is she requested for the state library to approve some more learning on her behalf. And the state library was so impressed with the site that they made it available for all librarians on their pre-approved list. So she's not only impacting MCPL staff, but potentially all the librarians in the state. I'm really proud of that part. So thank you for that part, Kim. And Edwin and Jen, are you ready?
I think we're ready.
Okay.
All right. I just want to thank you for inviting us to speak tonight about our Pioneer Grant project, the Adventure Backpack. As Bara said, my name is Jen Hoffman. I'm a community engagement librarian, and I'm joined by my colleague, Edwin Falwell, who is a senior information assistant. I just wanted to talk a little bit about sort of the idea and the background for the Adventure Backpack. I was visiting my parents a couple years ago in Washington State, and as like many librarians do when you're on vacation, you go visit other libraries. So we were in a nearby town of Port Townsend, and I stopped in their library and immediately noticed their collection called Unusual Items to Borrow, which really piqued my attention. So they have some household items like cake pans and sewing machines, and then more specialized items such as bear-resistant food canisters and snowshoes and other similar things. But they also had something called the Adventure Backpack, and it contains items that are educational and to help enjoy the outdoors specific to Washington State. But it was something that I thought could really be tailored to our area in Indiana. There's a lot of interest in, in the trails and the parks surrounding us in Monroe County. So it really got me excited, and talking with Edwin, we decided to submit a Pioneer Grant proposal. So I'll turn it over to Edwin. He's going to tell you a little bit more about what is included in our Adventure Backpack.
Absolutely. So what are the Adventure Backpacks? For us, we conceived of them and assembled the Adventure Backpacks with the aim to kind of provide tools for aiding people in their outdoor adventures and to help provide easier access to outdoor experiences for library patrons. The tools that we include in the backpack include field guides to flowers, to birds, to trees, a set of binoculars, a compass, a simple first aid kit, maps, and activities from the State Parks Department. We've also included in each backpack a voucher good for free admission to any Indiana State Park. We worked with the DNR to pioneer this pilot program. The backpacks each check out for 2 weeks and cannot be renewed in order to make this limited resource available to the widest possible audience. In total, the whole of the Adventure Backpack collection costs around $700, with about 10% of that cost earmarked for replacements of consumables like Band-Aids and printed products, and about a third of the total budget being spent on the Park Pass voucher system.
So during the short time that the backpacks have been circulating, which is less than a year, we've had really positive comments from the community, as you can see here on social media. This is the kind of announcement on social media that they were coming, and we've had tons of likes and comments and shares to people alerting their friends that this was coming. So that was really great to see before we had even launched them. I also was talking to one of my bookmobile patrons after she had checked out the Adventure Backpack. She used it actually, she visited 2 state parks with her family over the summer. And she said it was a great way to kind of get outdoors, especially during COVID. There's not as much to do, so it was really fun. And the second time they used the backpack was actually at a state park where they met up with family members from out of state. So it was great for them to kind of stay safe and stay somewhat socially distanced and outside, and still be able to visit with family members and have their kids be outside and doing something positive. So that was a really great comment to hear from one of our backpack users. And she said she wouldn't have thought to use that to visit family had she not already had the backpack checked out already.
So as with most things during this past year, COVID created a number of different challenges to the creation, implementation, and the circulation of these adventure backpacks. Our initial assembly was delayed by several months as materials for the bags only began to arrive right as the library began to close down during the pandemic. And after we began to reopen, some of the planned procedures for how the backpacks circulated needed to be changed to accommodate new safety measures, like a 4-day returns quarantine and a 3-week checkout period that we were initially launching with. With in-person programming canceled, we were unable to do a lot of the in-person promotion that we had originally intended to. Despite this, the backpacks launched in August of 2020, with all of the backpacks immediately going on hold and 26 patrons queued up for them. Holds have continued to be placed even as the weather's grown cold, with 9 additional holds being placed in the last 5 months alone. Because of the pandemic and its challenges, we were unable to circulate the backpacks with the frequency that we kind of originally hoped to do so. In the 6 months of 2020, the backpacks have been available. They've circulated a total of 17 times, which is honestly just about the maximum number of checkouts that could have occurred during this time with all these pandemic circulation procedures in place. In 2021, so far, we've had 4 checkouts, and at this time, all 5 are currently on hold for patrons waiting to be checked out again.
So the Adventure Backpack has been successful by our metrics in terms of circulation and feedback from patrons. There were also the kind of our launch into the Library of Things collection, kind of stepping outside of books and other circulatable items into other types of things. So it's been successful, and we hope to see other Library of Things type materials follow in our footsteps. So the partnership with the Indiana Department of Natural Resources is one of our, is a great partnership, and is something that they were really excited about partnering with us, and we were very excited that they were on board to partner with us on this pilot project, the first in the state to be able to do this. So we're excited that they've extended the program into 2021. We realize that they may not extend it for, in the years to come. So we're already looking at alternatives to find different maps or guides or other resources to promote some of our free trails and natural areas around the community. And like Edwin was saying, with COVID, that kind of changed the way that we were able to do programming with the backpacks. We had a lot of ideas, and not all of them came to fruition because of COVID. But something that worked really well was that translated kind of to a digital format was the Winter Hiking Club. So this is a great, we call it kind of a book club style hiking club, where ahead of time we post, say, we're hiking at the Pate Hollow Trail. Go and hike this trail by this date, and then we'll meet up on Zoom. We'll talk about our experiences, what we saw when we hiked, and kind of get feedback from each other, and maybe talk about the next trail that the group is going to hike and check out. So it's a really great way for people to learn about new trails in the area and to kind of share what they learned with each other. So we'd again like to thank you for having us this evening, and we're excited to engage more patrons and increase access to our local state parks with this program in 2021. And we'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have as well.
Thank you, Jen and Edwin. Are there questions?
I have one. Are all the backpacks exactly the same, or do you have different locales of trails in each of them?
Oh, that's a good question. All of our backpacks are the same currently. So they have everything that is listed on this slide there is included in each backpack.
It sounds like a great idea to me.
Thank you.
I may have misheard, but didn't you say, did you say some part of the budget was spent on the vouchers for the park?
Yes, that is correct. Mm-hmm. They're $50 per voucher, which is what the public pays for a state or a year-long entrance pass to the state parks. So they're just giving that to us for the same price that they would charge an individual.
Oh, I see. So anyone who is in possession of the backpack can use the voucher to go to any park?
That's correct.
Exactly.
I thought the backpacks came with like one single-use voucher, but it's like a season-long or a year-long pass to all the parks.
Precisely.
Right. So if you have, right now the circulation time is, you could take it to multiple state parks during your circulation time. So that's kind of nice that, if you had a week off of vacation, you could travel around checking out different state parks. And the DNR hopes that by checking out the backpacks that it might inspire people to purchase their own passes.
And do you have a sense yet whether they'll continue or whether the DNR will continue?
They're continuing for 2021, but it's unclear beyond 2021 if that will continue to be the case.
Okay.
But they've expressed a lot of, yeah, I do too. They've expressed a lot of enthusiasm for the program though.
Well, thank you, Jen and Edwin. Another great program. It's really innovative and nice to support a kind of outdoor activities, which is what most of us are stuck with these days. And another great way. I know this wasn't planned for COVID, but it's a nice way for us to respond during the pandemic. And thank you for sharing it with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's now time for public comment. If there are any members of the public who wish to address the board, now is the time to do so.
And we have none that we can see.
Seeing none, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Thank you, everyone, for a great meeting and for supporting the ongoing work of the library. And we will see you at our next meeting. We are adjourned.